Hello everyone, welcome back to Helldivers 2. I hope you're all enjoying the new Borderline Justice Warbond, as well as the preceding patch that gave us a lot of goodies, including a newly kick-ass Eruptor. Personally, apart from the Eruptor, I'm really enjoying the hover pack. I think there's a lot we can do with that. With that in mind, I sat down with some coffee yesterday morning and started screwing around. And it occurred to me that one could cheese and eradicate in the old school fashion while also having a use for Firebomb Hellpods. So, I did just that. Super Helldive, Bugs, Eradicate with cheese, and a hover pack. For stratagems, I'm running the aforementioned hover pack, the Q cannon, anti-personnel mines, and anti-tank mines. For gear, I've got the Eruptor, the Ultimatum, and Seeker Grenades. My booster is the never-popular Firebomb Hellpods. Why? Because this is the kind of stuff I get up to when I'm waiting for the caffeine to kick in. Here we go. Get my bearings. I dropped the hover pack there, and the Q cannon there, both in pathing areas for the nearby spawns, so theoretically, if something gets close as they drop, it also gets dead. Also, make sure you grab any ammo you see lying around so you have maximum ultimatum missiles before you get into position, because ideally, once you're in position, you're not going to move until the evac shuttle arrives. First jump coming up. Here we go. The goal is to land here and reach the peak of this rock. Now we wait for refresh. Second jump. There we go. Third jump. This is home. From here, everything's pretty self-explanatory. Drop mines into the horde of enemies below, firebomb kills on impact, mines do what they do, enemies die. I've done this maybe half a dozen times now, just smoothing out the kinks. Since you never know what enemy spread you'll get, you have to come in assuming that you're going to be knocked down at some point. Light armor isn't your friend here, as every fall resulted in death. Now, a medium armor with Democracy Protects proved consistent at keeping me alive if I got knocked down. Though, right before this run, I was knocked down and landed on a mine, hence why I brought explosive resistant armor this time around, which ended up being a moot point. The potential enemy spread is also why I've brought the Eruptor instead of a sickle or the scythe with their effectively infinite ammo. This is because of bile spewers. Their mortar attack is the only thing that can reach you up here outside of having roaming shriekers on the map. So, if your enemy spread has bile spewers, you want to drop them as soon as you can. The Eruptor can one-shot them, while the sickles or the scythe take a bit of focused fire to drop one of them. Also, this particular planet happens to be hot, so lasers heat up extra quickly. If you have no bile spewers, you can use your limited ammo supply to snipe whatever you want. I often focus on the pods of little bugs. The Eruptor can typically kill the entire group, and they don't count a ton towards your mission success, so you can pad the hell out of your kill count that way. In one of my earlier runs, I had over 400 kills by the end. Typically, it ranges anywhere from 250 to 300. In this run, hunters weren't an issue, but in previous runs, they have jumped halfway up the front, pathed all the way up to the top, and fallen over the backside. Only one of them ever actually attacked me, and that was one that I meleeed, so theoretically, if you ignore any hunters that happen to reach all the way up here, their pathing will take care of them for you. Regarding stratagems, you can most definitely do this more effectively with real stratagems over mines, but since I wanted something to do with the Firebomb Hellpods, I needed something that would land among the enemies and still do damage. That said, if you try this, keep in mind that on the PS5, there's a limit to how many enemies and items can be on the field at once. If you have a shit ton of mines out there and you start to notice the enemy groups are looking a little thin, start shooting your mines to clear the field a bit. Also, turn around and look down the back of this rock formation. Enemies will pull down there, specifically Bile Titans and Impalers, along with a dozen or so little mooks. There's a very small section of viable map down there, and it's kind of hard to hit with a stratagem. In order to pull it off, you're going to want to jump into a hover. While you're in the air, take the time to snipe as many of the Litlins as you can see before you drop, which is another good reason to bring the Eruptor over an infinite ammo gun. You don't necessarily need the Q cannon for this. I've run the hover pack with 3 sets of mines, 2 sets of mines and a turret, and they all work fine. Gas mines on a Tesla tower also worked, but that run took the entire time limit. Doing this with Firebomb Hellpods in mind really limits your offensive options. Hence why no one uses these things. And I'm someone who likes tagging enemies with beacons for just this purpose. But there simply aren't enough options that can do that part of the job without being sacrificial. Mines are really the only stratagem we have that can be thrown into the middle of an enemy group without losing their functionality. The Tesla tower or the turret work, but you have to throw the Tesla off to the side and the turret even farther away so enemies die as they approach them. But that negates the Firebomb Hellpod strike. And using a Tesla or a turret also means that you're going to spend time while they're up guarding them from heavies, so you'll need something that can drop those relatively quickly, as Chargers and Bile Titans will make a beeline towards your sentries as soon as you place them. Alternatively, you can plan around knowing that at some point you're going to have to drop to the ground during your run. In one run, I threw a resupply out to the far side of extraction. I found my happy thought and I took to the air. Unfortunately, those Bile Titans are quick SOBs, and one was already underneath me before I finally dropped to the ground. A possible plan of attack would be to throw your first, second, and third resupplies all in the same location, tossing the first as soon as you land in the mission and the other 2 as they pop. Kill about 50% of the enemies that you need for success, then hover to the resupply cache. Then just spam your 24 grenades and 12 ultimatum strikes as long as you can hold out before you have to make a strategic withdrawal and climb your way back up here. That said, depending on the enemy spawn compositions as you're doing that, you may not even need to bug out, as you could conceivably knock out a huge chunk of kills with that kind of arsenal. I've yet to test that strategy, but talking about it really makes me want to. That said, you'd have to burn a lot of the clock waiting for the resupplies to stack up, which could be an issue with the remaining time. So far, I've only had the one mission run out the whole clock, and my 2 fastest runs were this one with the Q cannon and a 12-minute run with the laser cannon. The laser cannon worked out pretty well early on. Actually, it kind of worked better than the Q cannon early on. But the Q cannon maintains its effectiveness through the whole mission, whereas the laser cannon started to become less and less effective as more heavies took to the field, especially on this planet, which, as I mentioned, was a hot planet. Also, the laser cannon wasn't particularly useful at dealing with the enemies pooling up on the backside of this position, as you only have that time that you're in the air to shoot them before you drop back down. Getting knocked down is not the end of the world. I've only had 2 runs where I wasn't knocked down, but I was still able to complete the mission. In some instances, I made my way around the map and then climbed my way back up here. In others, I just fought a circle around the map until extraction. Do whatever works. The important thing is that falling doesn't necessarily mean failure. As long as you survive the fall, it's not terribly difficult to run a circle around the map and climb back up. Also, if you do happen to die in the fall, it's likewise not terribly difficult most times to land near your gear, grab it quickly, and then circle around the map to get back into position. That said, while you're up here in position doing Liberty's work, if you get to the point where your hover pack comes back up out of refresh, be sure to toss that extra one somewhere where you can potentially grab it with relative ease if you happen to need it. With that in mind, you also don't necessarily have to return to this particular position. There are multiple rock formations around this map's perimeter that work nearly as well. Some work just as well, though they're not quite as easy to reach as quickly, while others you can get to in a single jump or 2, but those may not be high enough to avoid impaler tentacles, and you'll need to be even higher to be free of jumpers and Bile Titan's acid spray. Whatever the case, those locations can still work as good temporary reprieves to give you a moment to breathe and reassess before you move on. On the topic of some of those other accessible summits, being far from extraction isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you find yourself in a spot that's still within the bounds of the map, but outside the extraction radius, the evac shuttle will still come down, but it'll go straight into hover mode and start putting in work for you. This is a good way to clear out the last bit of trash between you and victory before you make your way to the shuttle. Not much more to say before I let the rest of this video run. Something to keep in mind, try to avoid filling the middle of the extraction area with mines. It's pretty easy to reach the extraction shuttle from here, but that doesn't mean it's all sunshine and roses. You'd be surprised how many of those little enemies you've got milling around below will find their way to you before you manage to land. And if that happens, you don't want them detonating mines beside you, or knocking you into mines and potentially putting an end to your run. Likewise, try to avoid tossing mines into the other areas of the outer perimeter. If you get knocked out of position and have to do a lap before you can climb back up, you don't want to have an explosive obstacle course to contend with while you're also dealing with enemies. Also, with no enemies pathing around in those opposite sides of the map, any mines you've thrown over there will just sit there, counting against the maximum number of enemies you can have on the field at one time, and thereby slowing down your progress rather than helping it. And that's it, folks. That's all I got. Thankfully, this will be mission accomplished as soon as I pancake that charger in the face. There we go. If you've made it this far, you might as well hang out until the extraction shuttle arrives. You never know, something crazy could happen. One of those monkeys down there could Ginsu me as I land, or, more likely, knowing me, I'll run over a mine that's plainly visible, yet I never saw coming. There's the shuttle. Little last-minute cleanup. And that's it, folks. One of the cheesiest extraction solos we've seen since the game first came out, before Arrowhead decided to put invisible walls in place and basically make our drop pods come straight down, which essentially negates the fact that we can move them in most cases, but, you know, they know better than us, apparently. Whatever the case, it's back to chasing that Deathless full map clear solo. Getting pretty close, but not quite there yet, but hopefully I'll have it soon. Until then, thanks for watching.